everyone, this is Rejoice and on Umatta Consultant Podcast. Today we have the special privilege of speaking with Tiffany. Tiffany is an HR executive leader. She's also Chief People Officer. I would love for her to introduce herself as she sees fit, and then we'll dive right into the questions.
Oh,
Tiffany,
thank
the
you.
mic is yours.
Thank you, Rejoice. I am so happy to be here. I was so thrilled when you asked me to join about this topic. I have been in the HR space for many, many moons, more moons than I want to count. But it's a very important, space for me to be in. I also serve as executive advisor for Graphio, and I serve as an executive board advisor for um, Change Engine.
Awesome, awesome. We're so excited to have you here and thank
Yay!
you for being here and answering our questions. As an HR leader, can you share a bit about your journey and what inspired you to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in human resources?
Yeah, actually, I didn't start in HR. I am a transplant. I actually started my career in customer facing operations some years ago, and I love the space. My goal in an organization was to become a chief operating officer at one time. And then I reported into a wonderful vice president who at the time told me, Tiffany, process is your strength, but people are your superpower. And
Mm,
you'll be successful in process. But if you really, really want to have the career that I know you want, you got to go walk in your superpower. Had
mm.
no idea what he was talking about. I was a young leader. I was with people. I had managed a very large team, and everything that we did was very people focused. And I didn't get it, but I took some time, did some introspection, and I finally got it. He was saying that what you do for the customer experience, you need to bring it in front of for the people experience, and so that's what started my journey over into HR. And it's so important to me, especially in this era of anti DEI, to continue to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility because it's just the right thing to do.
Right.
You know,
Amazing. I love your story. It's so interesting. Most HR executive leaders did not start in HR. It's so amazing how that happens. And sometimes it's the best career decision. So we're super happy for you. What does leading like hidden figures mean to you? And how does it connect to your work today?
yeah, Hidden Figures is one of my favorite movies, and es- especially in this age of AI, where everyone is just kind of they don't understand AI,
Right.
or they're kind of freaking out about AI is going to take our roles, or and things of that nature. Leading like Hidden Figures. So if you watch the movie, if you've ever seen the movie, I love Octavia Spencer's character.
Yeah.
She just embodies all of the leadership characteristics that I want to exude and I want to you know lean into in my career. And so she was a mathematical, like a computer, like an actual human computer. They had to do like her team, they had to manually compute all of these figures and calculations, and then of course there is a machine that is developed that then goes in and can do it in seconds. um, and so instead of her you know just being so freaked out about it, or shying away from it, she's like, you know what, I need to learn
Mhm.
everything that I need to know about this computer so that I can be the subject matter expert. I'm going to be the one. They're always going to need a human to support this machine. No machine's going to be able to do what I do. And so she learned that, learned the computing system, and not only did she learn it, she taught all of her team how to do it. And that's how I feel like we've got to stay ahead of the curve. Technology is always going to advance, technology is always going to evolve. And in order for us to stay relevant, you have to evolve with technology. That's the only way.
Exactly, exactly. Love the reference to the movie. I've watched it and I super agree with you in terms of everything you've mentioned. As a chief people officer and an HR executive leader, how have you seen the role of leadership evolving in the age of AI and digital transformation?
I think I see HR and HR leadership getting a, a more strategic seat at the table.
Mm,
Typically, in the past, and even currently, HR has been really looked at kind of separate, even though it's been that space. I always say like finance and technology usually run an organization, right? If you got the
yeah,
dollars to do it, it's probably going to get done.
right,
If you got the technology to do it, it's probably going to get done.
right.
But what both finance and technology need to get things executed, it's people,
Right.
right? And so I see, and I've seen this over the last, maybe 10 or so years, that HR is getting a much more strategic and business
Mm.
focused seat at the table.
Exactly, exactly. You need a people strategy to figure out all the things that are going on with technology and integration of people. Amazing. And I wonder how can organizations also ensure that AI or machine learning technologies are built with diverse perspectives to avoid biases and inequalities.
Well, first and foremost, organizations have to commit to understanding AI. That's
Mm,
you can't really integrate something that you don't understand. That's number one. And then number two, it's about having diverse perspectives in the development. It
mm,
can't be just this homogenous, one size kind of fits all type of thing, because it's not. You have to have different people, different perspectives in the development of the technology to ensure that those perspectives are realized in the technology.
right. Amazing. Amazing. Definitely. And I know there's always concerns about biases. People are always concerned, can technology really be unbiased? That's something that people have.
Mhm.
I guess we'll wait and see what would potentially happen.
Yeah, I think that there's potential for bias in everything in all technologies, but again, I think it you have to look at who's developing the technology
Mm,
and who's really hands on in building and implementing the technology. And there's so much great talent across so many spectrums, that there's no excuse not to have diverse perspectives
yeah,
in the development of technology.
I agree. I agree with you. What lessons can today's leaders learn from stories from the movie Hidden Figures at NASA?
Um, First, I think understanding people,
Mm,
because there was, that was a time, back in the 50s and 60s, where there were things were a lot different than
yes.
they are today, especially for women in the workforce.
Right.
And so I think that understanding and really giving opportunities,
Right.
for different people to contribute. And so that's one of the things that I loved about the movie. At the end of the day, a lot of what happened in one of the most important and significant, historical experiences in our country was built by Black women,
Right.
right? And so having just, again, opening the door for opportunities, I think that's number one. Um, and then number two, looking around the room. I think sometimes we get so focused on what's in front of us that
Right.
we don't see what's around us. And so I think it's a really good lesson for leaders to kind of stop, look up, look around, and pause, right? And take things in, and understand that there's an outcome that we're trying to get to, but that outcome may not necessarily be in a linear path.
Right, right, definitely. Especially depending on your industry, also your employee,
Hmm.
what's happening globally, and etc. How do you see the role of underrepresented groups, particularly women and minorities, shaping the future of AI and innovation?
I see it in a major way. I see underrepresented groups shaping AI and innovation in a major way, if those opportunities are there, right?
Yes,
I think that there's so much, knowledge and so much diverse perspectives that underrepresented groups bring to the table. And I mean, we see it in companies all the time. The companies that are really vested in, their diversity, their equity, their inclusion, DEI, all the things, they're much more profitable. They're much more successful. They have much better brand awareness, all the things, right? So it's DEI completely, it's a direct correlation to the bottom line, right? And so, having those diverse perspectives and having those underrepresented groups is really like the biases that we talked about.
Right.
We're, having those underrepresented groups significantly kind of weeds out those biases.
Exactly, exactly. And just looking at the technology questions, even with responses like Chat GPT,
Right.
sometimes you type something in, you look at the response, you're like, not quite sure about that.
Well, my chat GBT, I call him Chad. He knows me very, very well. That's so like I'll ask a question and sometimes I'm like, gosh, you really know me now.
Right, right, right. It's
You
amazing.
learned who I am.
I was actually looking on LinkedIn and I noticed some people were right, like, oh, they typed in, tell me about myself for
Yeah.
the course of knowing me. What can I improve on? What are things that I'm really good at? And I was reading some of the things that Chat GPT produced. I was like, wow, interesting.
I did that. And I had I think there was a prompt out there that was like, what does a day in the life look like for my future self
Yeah.
based on, whatever goals that I want to achieve. And I did that prompt and I was like, wow,
Oh.
that I need to follow that actually.
It's amazing. It's the other day I was on Clubhouse and there was a gentleman that came in and he said he actually was having an issue with his wife and they couldn't resolve it and the wife wanted them to sort of take it to family and he said why don't we ask Chat GPT? So
Wow.
they each wrote their perspective about the problem and then Chat GPT produced an outcome for their problem and they both agreed. So it was
Chad.
it's interesting. I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I guess I'm curious, what does it mean to be an innovative leader in the age of AI? And how can leaders foster a culture of inclusion while also driving technological advances?
To be an innovative leader, you got to be forward thinking. You've got to realize where you are today, but always have the outcome in mind. And so, whatever that outcome is, you have to be looking to towards that outcome. Like whenever I problem solve, I always problem solve from with the end in mind, right? Like if I'm looking at a project or I have like a project manager's brain, right? Okay, here's where we want to be. How do we work our way backwards to get there, right?
Right,
And so I think that's an important skill for innovative leaders to have is to be able to always envision that outcome.
right,
And because when you're envisioning the outcome, you're not thinking in this direct kind of path. You're looking at different ways to, get to that particular outcome. There may be, a fork in the road over here or a fork in the road over there, or the solution may not be on the road at all. You got to think about it. So I think that's the critical skill that innovative leaders need to have. It's really beginning with the end in mind.
that's true. That's true. But what happens if they don't know what is the end goal? Like, sometimes there's confusion. Like, what is exactly the end goal that we're trying to achieve?
And getting down to clarity,
Mhm.
asking those questions, challenging the process, challenging the status quo. And I think, right now it's difficult, because sometimes challenging can be looked at not as, in the positive way that
Right,
it's meant, right? And so, but I think that you have to be courageous and you still have to continue to keep challenging. You have to continue to keep questioning and, seeking that clarity because nothing comes from just a culture of agreement, right? Like everybody's saying the same thing. I call it the chamber of reverb, right? Like if you ever think about reverb and you got all these same homogenous voices kind of all together. And so you throw something out there and it just all comes back to you. It's all this, reverb and all of this back noise. And you've got to be able to step out on faith and on courage and ask the questions and say the things, speak the unsaid.
right. Exactly. I agree with you. And in the event of everything that we're talking about in changes around the world globally, what role does mentorship or sponsorship, some call it, play in creating opportunities for underrepresented groups in various industries?
So I look at mentorship and sponsorship differently. I know some people like to interchange them, but I think that they're two separate things.
Okay.
Mentorship is going to more be the pouring into you and kind of,
Right.
you know, helping you to evolve, coaching, things of that nature, right?
Right.
Sponsorship is, the when you're not in the room, who's endorsing you, right?
Right.
So, and are they is like what is being said about you, and who's that person that's always going to endorse you and promote you and advocate for you when you're not in the room, right? Um, I think both of them play a huge part in where we are and in developing leaders into even better leaders. Mentors and coaches really kind of can shine the mirror on you
Right.
and challenge you to go outside of the things that you've been very comfortable in developing. I think, any good mentor should challenge you, should really make you a little bit uncomfortable. I think a good mentor and a good sponsor should do the same. But the sponsor for me is again just promoting who I endorse Tiffany.
Right.
I endorse Rejoice.
Right.
And I know that this person has just XYZ and I will sing their praises to the hills.
Mm.
So and those are both very important in helping us navigate through this new era.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Do you feel like mentorship is something that people should seek, or it comes to them naturally at their various workplaces, vice versa with the sponsorship?
I think both you have to seek.
Okay.
Um, and sometimes mentors will definitely come to you like it will you'll find each other,
Right.
but I think if you're really looking to elevate and you're looking to advance, those are things just like you seek out another degree program or
Right.
you education. I think it's important for you to invest in yourself and go out and seek mentorship and sponsorship for sure.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. How do you see AI evolving or transforming the workplace? And what should organizations do to prepare their workforce for these changes?
I think AI is going to make the workplace a lot more efficient.
Hmm.
I think AI is going to make the workplace a lot more effective. And to prepare the workforce for AI, it has to be a part of an organization's operational plan, an operational strategy. So just like you bake in, your people operations or customer operations, technology operations, that AI has to have, a pillar in that operational strategy and plan as well. It has to be a part of the business strategy overall.
Awesome. I think you're spot on, because then you can also measure it and say, okay, these are the measurable results that we
Right.
were able to achieve, and then if they weren't achieved, what happened, who's
Hmm.
accountable, and etc. How can HR leaders like yourself ensure that AI tools used in hiring, or let's say talent acquisition or management, are fair and unbiased?
Well, for me, using AI, I think that using AI in talent acquisition, like it can't be everything, right? It has to be a component of the talent acquisition strategy or the hiring strategy, and really around the more of the administrative components. Like, for example, job descriptions, right? I think AI could be absolutely fantastic in helping to take out a lot of the bias in job descriptions if you utilize it properly, right? But I wouldn't necessarily recommend, AI to, you know, screen, like do be 100% responsible for screening candidates and interviewing candidates and
Right.
stuff like that. No, there has to be a human element there. So I think it's about incorporating it, just like incorporating it into any other operational plan. It's a part of the strategy. And there's, again, foundation, there's metrics, there's things around it that you can measure.
Exactly. Awesome. I think that's a great idea. If you could give yourself, Tiffany, an advice going back to your younger self, one piece of advice you give to yourself, what would that be?
Oh, if I'm talking to my younger self, what would I say to her? I would say keep I usually am the person who says the unspoken, and sometimes it's gotten me into trouble, quote unquote trouble. But I would tell her to keep doing it. Keep doing it. Don't change the course, because that makes you a courageous leader. That makes you the leader who will advocate for what's right, who will challenge the status quo, and and you're a better leader for it.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. It's so empowering, especially right now. Young people are looking for advice on what they should do with their career, whether they should change it. Sometimes you just need to be yourself and keep going. And
Yeah, I feel like if you're in a spot where you can't be yourself, then that's not the right spot for you.
mm,
And I know that that's difficult. I've had to grow to this point, right? I think,
right.
when you're in your 20s and when you're just kind of, starting out, especially when, I, I, I started out um, over 20 years ago, there's just this code of business, this code of, you can't say this, you can't do
Right.
that, you can't do that, right? Or you have to, there's a certain, business etiquette or business kind of things. And there is a certain level of acumen, right? There's certain things that you need to learn, right?
Right.
And there's a certain, but, there is also the, you know, etiquette rules that are kind of baked into business to kind of discourage
Yes.
people from being transparent and people from being, candid. And so it's a delicate balance, but it's really about, knowing yourself and being very steadfast and true with who you are so that you can be able to again have those particular conversations and say the things that need to be said and be impactful with that because you can't just say stuff just to say it. It has to have an impact, right?
Exactly. It has to be a business reason. Completely
Right.
agree with you on that one. Awesome. Who are some of the hidden figures in your life who have inspired you or supported your journey along the
Oh gosh, I could talk about that for a half an
way?
hour. Going back to, just my grandmother was a huge influence for me. She passed on about 20 years ago. But she grew up in a time where, women just did not have, the access and the tools and the power that they have today. She just didn't. She was born, in the South in the early 1900s. So, that was the time for that. But she was one of the most intelligent people that I've ever known. And she made such an emphasis for, education. She didn't graduate from high school. But, it was such an emphasis on, her children and her grandchildren to get to become educated and to further their education. Because I fully believe that if my grandmother had the opportunities that I had to be able to, go to school, have an undergraduate degree, have a master's degree, and all these things. My grandmother could have ran the world,
Right.
100%. So she's really one of my biggest influences, and just the person who always, I hear her voice sometimes, like she grounds me and she, lets me know, okay, here's where you need to go. This is what you need to do. Throughout my career, I've had the wonderful pleasure of having wonderful leaders to help develop me. Going back to earlier in my career when the vice president that I reported into told me that I need to be in people that his name was John Meinhardt. I was at GMAC at the time, and he literally changed my entire career trajectory, and I give him all the credit. And Stephen St. Rose. He's a chief HR officer guru. He is who I aspire to be as a chief HR officer, and just has really just shaped my career path and really just served as a mentor, served as a sponsor, and just is always there. I appreciate him.
Awesome, awesome. I love that. I love how they have been so influential and supportive throughout your journey and giving you support, advice, suggestions, and leading you to where you want to be. So I guess we're curious to find out from you your last thoughts regarding leading like hidden figures. Any last takes before we end our show today?
Yeah, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Growth comes when you're outside of the comfort zone, and things become much easier
Right.
when you lean into the difficult.
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. So, Tiffany, where can people learn more about you, connect with you, the types of work you're doing, or if they have any questions they would like to reach out to you about?
Yeah, absolutely. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I mean, I am a LinkedIn junkie. I am totally on LinkedIn. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty, um, significant LinkedIn presence and a LinkedIn following. And so that's where I kind of post all my thoughts and tidbits and things of that nature.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, and your nuggets that you were able to offer us today. We wish you a good day and thank you. And next time, let us know if we can have you on the show again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. That is it.